I come from a very big family with all growers in my family, and I have to say most of my brothers grow pears these days. But when I left Holland 24 years ago, 26 years ago, they were all apple growers. Actually, the pear industry in Europe is actually better money than apples. And I have to say that my brothers this year did not even pick the apples. With the Russian sanctions coming in, they decided not to pick, but they picked all the pears. But they can export them to England, and not to England, to Russia. Yes, that was interesting to see. This, and that's one thing you probably don't know, but we were talking about, as a general manager, I worked for the Vogelists, and that was actually for a long time the only pear exporter from Queensland. And I'm a little bit doubtful, but I probably was the only pear exporter out of Australia when I was here, probably 10 years ago, okay? And we did actually only Bosque, we sent that to Switzerland, and we did probably 20 containers every year. And it was probably 12 for myself from Queensland, and the rest we bought from Tasmania. And they were nice and rusty, and that's what we did as an export. I have a little bit of experience with export as well. We go that way, and this is what I want you to ask. If you actually are focused on export, if you export, actually, first question you have to ask yourself, do you want to export, okay? And then you have to ask to which country, and what do they want and what do they expect. But if you're in the market and you export, you really have to know where you send what you really want. But it is not like I see sometimes people that send export, but it's not export quality. You compete with Chile, you compete with South Africa. You have to really look what they are doing, basically, okay? It is really important to know your clients and what you expect. And that's the same as I exported lychees for a long time, and it's the same with lychees. It is the same if you, these days with cherries, you know, like lots of my clients from Tasmania, they sell now overseas, but what's really important is which client, what, okay? If the answer is yes, start planning early, okay? That's very, very important. You have to start actually probably with your first spray, so that you know that at least that country that you have your withholding periods and your chemicals right. That's very important, okay? You said this was actually my briefing. This is all very important. Firstly, you have to ask what the market wants, and then you have the right size, color, skin finish, the breaks. But it's all about what the consumer wants or what your client wants, not yourself, okay? What we think is good is probably sometimes not good when you send overseas. The good news is if you send both to Switzerland, for example, they want softer pears. They don't want them hard like here, okay? You can leave them a little bit longer on the trees, actually, for that matter. Yes. Okay. Oh, I did this one. That's working. Yeah. What I see actually when I'm working in this district, and I work in this district probably for the last 7 years, and I pick up more and more people who I work with, but the biggest problem is really Limrock. In the Peckhams, Williams, I would say that's #1 problem, and then the second one will be probably rots, but we come back on that. But skin finish is #1. Size is not really critical. We get the size all right, but we don't get the skin finish right. How do we get that? We have to start early. That's what I said. It should be starting with pruning. And this is a photo. Some people actually will recognize it. This is Jeff de Costa from Belgium. He was a pear expert. He passed away, unfortunately. When he was on this photo, he was already 80. He was still very passionate about pruning, where you put the place, how to prune pears to get that quality where you were talking about. In Europe, it's so focused on pears, and okay. And you see that here, we have actually, you can see it starts with pruning. This is the cordon system. We actually had a field day the other day with pruning over there with John Carl. That's a system where you have nice small trees, you can place the fruits, and that makes things life very easy if you have very high dense systems. Okay. Like I said, if you export, allocate your export blocks, okay? Make sure that you know which block you're going to do. I see it all the time, people export, and quite often, and that's really in habit from Australia, is that they buy them from the market and then export the pears. And that's not really what you like to do in the ideal world, when your quality is under pressure. But the most fruit what is exported, believe it or not, out of Australia, is actually bought on the Sydney and Melbourne markets. Not really planned for export, okay? There's, like I said, if you have systems like Open Tortura, Palmet, like you said just before from John Carl, it is much easier for quality for the management. How many people thin trees? Who are pear growers? How many people are here? Yes. How many people do thin pears here in the Goulburn Valley? Exactly. But actually, in general, very little. You know, most people actually would not thin the pears to get the quality. And there's a few exceptions, but if you have smaller trees, it is probably much easier. And you see, if you see, if you have big trees like this, it is the quality is always more variation. And you see that at the next slide. You see, when you look at the trees like this, you got a little bit more sunburn in the top. The maturity, we talk about maturity a little bit later, but the maturity is different in the top of the tree, the bottom of the trees. It is much harder to handle an export quality if you talk about quality and getting everything the same. This, again, you see this is the Tortura trellis, this is from that trowel block what we got. And again, it's much easier to get on a Tortura trellis, Open Tortura. Although it is a bushy block, it is still easier to get the quality. And you see the difference between the last slide and you can always pick actually good quality, I know that. But when you got under the trees, you find actually on the Tortura trellis or high dense system, you find actually much nicer skin finish, and that's really important actually. This, again, what I said actually, if you export, make sure that you know where you send to. I have seen actually people want to export, and then we got the wrong chemicals on for that country and we can't export. And that's with apples, pears, just make sure that you know what they require really, and that's why I said to you guys, get it on the website. It's not the end of the season, we want to know in the beginning of the season what we can put and spray. And I said fertilization according to lab analyzers. When you export, you want to make sure that the calcium ratio is fine and everything else. And the last one is really important, especially with pesticide. We can use pesticide, but the rest of the world can't use. So you make sure that that's where you export to, that's allowed to do. And it starts all the planning. And again, you see that high-dense system again, where you can actually do that. I'll just show you another high-dense system. This is in Holland. This is from one of my brothers. He planted the trees a meter apart. 2 years later, he decided actually to put one tree in the middle, so he let one grow up again, and it is now 50 centimeters apart. But you see, when you see those systems, they can actually work from the ground and thin them and get the quality. And of course, like in Europe, you see a lot of platforms, and when you look at this Goulburn Valley, they are platforms, but quite often the trees are not suitable because they're big trees. We use cherry pickers, and they are not the ideal tools really to work in there, to get the quality what we really want, you know. And you work quite often with contractors, and I know when you are a contractor, you want to get pick so much and as quick as possible, and a lot of stamp punches, and you know, it is very hard to get that right. But again, platforms will be the idea. See, this is another brother, this is actually my youngest brother who took over my dad's farm, and this is another system, that's a V system, but I took this photo, you see him in front of it, he can almost pick everything from the ground, and he still picks 70 tons of pears from those blocks. But it's a 1 liter, it's actually a 4 liter tree. Again, if you look at it, every branch is about 40 centimeters apart. This we call that super spindle system. Okay. And again, this is actually not a problem, but plucker trucks is used in high-dense systems for picking, less handling, no picking bags, straight in the bins. And you can actually have somebody like the last person on the top there, is one of my older brothers. He is actually looking, and he throws, so he picks the tops, but in the meantime he throws also a rotten pear or whatever out as well. Does he do a sort of grading on the machine? Again, you can do that on a machine like this, but you can't do that if you have cherry pickers, or not so good anyway. And contractors will not do that for you. They want to get the bins full. Again, you see those systems. You see in Europe, if you go to Europe, you see a lot of these systems, like plucker trucks or other systems to pick with. But again, I always said, you have to have your trees right before you buy the machine. You have to have an high dense block before you do those things. Otherwise they are useless. Okay, this is another system where you see sometimes in Europe, and actually they take the bin with them. With other words, you can do that on your flat ground, but the Shepton you can. They pull the bins with them, they don't put it on the ground, and they try to pick straight in the bins, all for quality. So if you put them in the picking bag first, they roll, you get scratches, and it's a very focus on quality. Okay. Again, you see that like here, this is a little bit a different system. They've got a small tractor, we call it a plug train. They actually have the bins. These are apples, by the way, but I thought it was the only photo I could find from the plug train where they pick straight in the bins, no picking bags. And they've got 5 bins, and then they drive the little tractor out, and then the next tractor comes. And again, they don't put the bins on the ground for rods, basically. Again, you see those high bin system, quite low, lots of pears. Probably the average is only 60 tons a hectare, but it's very high quality. They probably have packouts from 80–90%. Okay. There's others in Chile, and I want just to bring that up. I go from one country to the other, but I go through this very quickly, but I see that when you export, I thought it was really interesting. They give me the guidelines in Chile, and I thought I'd go really quick with you guys through, and it is just what we have to do as well. You know, just what is really important. You clean bins. Okay, start always with clean bins, and plastic bins are ideal, but they can be better cleaned. But anyway, if you have wooden bins, we should really, and that's what already everybody knows that, but cleaning bins is hard work, and most people would not do it, but some people do, but other people don't. So you get a lot of variation in quality again. This picking is done by workers with train. That's probably here the same air ride suspension system to, like on trucks, to make sure that it's not damaged. And like I said, we don't have to follow everything. Cold store, everybody knows that. You bring it down as quick as possible to half a degree, if possible. Hydro cooling would be ideal. In Chile and South Africa, by the way, it's almost a standard. They put the whole trucks on the hydro cooling. They drive actually the whole truck with bins straight under the showers, and they cool it down straight at field temperature with water. And then later on they cold store them like that, okay, to get the temperatures down so much as possible. And then that's more or less like you said. Then they go to 0, and then they keep the high humidity up. And you have to do that on pears, high humidity for strength stem. But everybody knows that. This again, people work, and what I thought was really interesting. According to regulation of the country, okay, not many people in the world wax. It's only Australia and the United States. But Chile exports to the United States, and for the United States they wax. And for all the other countries they don't wax. Again, they just make the markets and make sure that they do the right thing. Okay, and this is probably where we all know. This is what we try to avoid. The shrivel, the neck end shrivel, that's for pears actually very common. And that has to do with the higher humidity in the cold rooms. Avoids colds. You guys will talk about that with SmartFresh. DPA is minimize lenticel burn. You see that on the pears quite often actually when you look in the shop. You see that little bit of burn. You see the lenticel, pronounced lenticels, almost burning, not quite, but just there. And that's very important. And DPA, by the way, I'm not sure how long we're going to have that actually. I have to say that it is a very nasty chemical. I'm starting to look at it in the Pink Lady program. And how more I know about it, how less it's good that you probably don't know about this. I think that's going to disappear one day. We have to come up with better ideas. This post-harvest rots is always in pears, guys. The whole world has problems with rots in pears, okay? You will be not the only one. If you grow pears, you have rots. And it has to do with high sugars. and it has also to do with the cells from a pear. They go actually deeper than apples. You find actually that there is much more scale, much more cells infected with rots. There was some Belgian research that it's not only the sugars what actually cause the rots, it's also the cell structure. They go deeper and there's more air going under the skin. You find actually pears rot much easier than apples in the same circumstance. Okay? There's keep fruit green. Then there's other systems than just Smart Fresh actually in Europe. They use also films and everything else what they do to get at. And it's really important, and Smart Fresh these days is a very important part of that, is to get the pears in sound condition, okay? And I'll talk about that a little bit more. There's one thing I see quite often. I look on the shops, okay? I buy pears, by the way, and I look in the shops, and shriveling is almost a problem out of the Golden Valley. Most people pick almost too early, okay? This maturity, I know that later on you talk about maturity, but it's very important that we talk about that actually as an industry. And you see it quite often, and especially in the billions, you guys pick so early and then they shrivel up in the shop, and you don't do the consumers any favors with doing that. Okay, this again, when you pack, this is all the easy stuff. You use trays, plastic bags, whatever you want to do. Again, you have to be sure that it's all approved and everything else what you want, especially if you send, like I did always to Switzerland, they got very, very strict regulations on everything. You have to make sure that even your cardboard is actually food. It's really, really important to know the market. Again, always look to what the country wants where you send the fruit to. Just don't think that what you do in your country is fine. Just make sure that you know the exporters and make sure that that's really linked. Special packing materials or cartons, again, it's very, very important. And I'll show you a few samples. This is one pears. This is actually from Italy, and you see that APAL or whatever they call it over there. That's a big ugly pear, but they pack them especially for Germany like that in one single trays. Again, we do a lot of research on what the consumers want. This is the Forel. This is the Corella for you guys, same pear, different name. Forel is actually the South African name for Corella. And again, what those guys are doing, and that's what I did in the end as well, I sent actually the pears up in the bins and let them packed in Switzerland. And South Africa is actually Vogelaar. We went actually with a group of Australian growers there. Vogelaar is one company who packs all the fruit, what comes in from New Zealand, in bins. The bins come to them, pack them over there to these packets so that you don't have to pack it and then you get some problems. If there is rots, it's much easier to control. There's descent per bin, especially with the foldable plastic bins these days, you can do it quite easily. And this is from South Africa, packed in Holland. And special, we pack them for the Albert Heijn, one of the biggest supermarkets in Europe, and they put the barcodes on and price on it and everything. And it's very, very, everything is open. You know the price where you sell for, there's small margin actually in export, but everybody gets his cut basically. And the South Africans are happy, that's the main thing. And again, here you see the conference in Holland, packed for England, plastic trays. Those trays get returned, empty. The trucks have to take the full pears up and bring the boxes back and pack it again. Okay, but again, you see nice presentation, all filled in nicely. And this is actually in the end of the season when you see that you see a little bit of browning from the stems. Okay, this again, the cue, people take the samples, and if there is something wrong, please take samples if you ever export. I had it once myself actually, that we found some weevils in the pears and they didn't like that. We had to stop the whole process. And just with checking, we found it out later, we fumigated them and we still send them, but you have to really make sure that that's all good. Leave some fruit behind so that you can actually check what's fruit you sent. Always leave a sample from what you send, a couple of boxes behind so that you can check. Okay? This, again, it is very important if you export that you can stop that process. If something goes wrong, in that moment before you actually send it that you can stop it, okay? And always analyze your chemicals with them from just before you left. You saw that with the pink ladies this year where actually with some DPA the levels were too high and some fruit has to be coming back, basically turned around. This again, very important that you make sure that you got the residue levels where you want to be. Okay, and this is all like everybody knows that, you know, you do the boxes, you put it on, you put your barcodes on these days, and yeah, the packing list is very important actually. That's actually, yeah, that's why I put it there. That's actually when you export, that have to be done, okay? It's not that you want to be done, that have to be done. And people who have exported have probably all went through that, but it's very important that you get that regulation and do it. It's not that not really so difficult exporting, so long as you have everything in place. This again, again, that was always fun from Stentorp, and we bought actually pears from Tasmania. We make sure that the trucks, and what is really important actually is the thermometers in it. I just tell you a little example from that. I sent actually once 10 containers up to Switzerland, and they were actually put on another boat in Singapore, and they were not plugged in. Okay, and they were 2 weeks on wharf without cooling. The good news was we had actually temperature monitoring, we had an insurance, and those pears were actually the best money ever. We got insurance money, and it was still sold on the Swiss market. But make sure that you got those temperature recorders in. I know it is all in cost when you do it in insurance, but make sure that you got it. It's just those hiccups. That's what you have with export, okay? Make sure that you got that done. There's the importers, and yeah, the importers from over there, they need that information. If there is, they can claim it. That's very important actually. Just what it said. I was not a big exporter, but you know, it's still possible that you get a hiccup. This is a scenario basically from exporting, if everything goes to plan, okay? And then you send them overseas, and then they complain about your quality, okay? Then the trouble starts. I had those things as well actually, especially with lychees. And with the pears, it was acquired. It was another company from us that they look after the problems. But that's why it is very important that you know the people who buy your fruit. If they want to help you, they can help you, but if they don't want to help you, you're in trouble. But this is actually a little bit of, this is most likely damage from the grader, and the fruit was probably packed too cold. Okay, pears, if you pack them too cold, you get black marks. And the temperature have to be or above 10 degrees, or it have to be very cold. But if you pack fruit around 7 degrees, you find very easy marking fruit. Does it have to be warm, or is it very important that it is not too cold? Okay, that's marking. I just show you a few other things. You see the rods you send overseas, and then you get these nice looking pears. Again, that's, you probably say, how is it possible that you have, but just pears do this, okay? You only have to have one nail. People should pick with gloves, and the nails at least should be cut and nice. One nail in a piece of fruit will actually cause this. Okay, and you see you get a few more, and then you get a few more, and then you see this is export quality, and you look at the skin finish, you see bumpy fruit. Bumpy fruit, by the way, packhand is going to do that. If they get more mature, they start to get more bumpy, but also it's actually low boron, okay guys? How more bumpy your fruit, how less you need much more boron to actually fill it fruit out, okay? And how more the fruit grows, how more you see the bumpiness coming in, okay? And how lower they are in boron, okay? So you really have to add through the season a lot of boron on pears, especially on the packhands. Okay, and you don't get it right totally out, but it's very important that you look after nutrition. That's why you need fruit samples, leaf samples, and make sure that that's happening. There's the bumpiness, what you see on the top, that's normal for packhands, but it is enhanced by low boron. Okay, you get an even more. A little bit of limb rub, you see that over there on the top one, for me the right hand side. This, you see that a little bit of limb rot, and then you see the rods coming in, and it is actually a very common rot. To avoid this, planning. That's what I said before. You have to plan those things, okay? You have to put a spray program in place. You have to do everything else what you have to do. I just want to do a little bit of storage rot. I know that's boring for people who don't grow fruit, but it is a really interesting subject actually. But I got a university degree, and one part of my study was actually looking into rots as well. And like I said, it's very common. Okay? You can find all the rots in the world in every pear. It is really interesting. I always said if I studied one more year, I would have been a professor, but I did actually study rots, and I should have done one more year, but anyway, I went hitchhiking around the world. That's what you do when you know. But Alternaria rot is one of the, I put it in the first place, and it is probably one of the most difficult ones. The problem with Alternaria rot, it is in every district in Australia. It is on every leaf what we test, every fruit we test, but nobody has a real answer when it starts to trigger. This Alternaria rot is very, very hard to control. I was in Italy, like you were in Italy just before, in Bolzano, and they talked about it that actually if it comes to above 20 degrees, then the rots start to occur on the fruit. As if you have your ideal temperatures, under 20 degrees is not a problem. But look at that here. You know, like today, like nice humid weather, if you get a little bit of rain, you get rot. It's again, blue mold is another one. That's one that's probably very, very common that's actually more in storage rot what sits in the bins. If you don't clean the bins, penicillin, blue mold is very, very common in the pears. And it's quite often when people don't clean the bins. Okay, this is actually avoidable, but it is. This is it where we all have to face, okay guys? Blue mold, you got actually the grey mold, and botrytis is actually another one that's very common, and you will see any rots. I always said it is really interesting actually. If you actually want to recognize your rots, you can send it away to Knoxfield, or you let it go further, put it in the office, and let it nice blue or black or whatever they do, at least you recognize which rots you're going to get. This, you should collect them if you ever do it. Make sure that they put them in the hotel room and that they're nice white, and then make a photo. Then you can recognize which rots we look at. This, again, Phytophthora rot is actually common as well. If you have overhead irrigation and you start to install that on, for example, pears, you have to really watch that, okay? You can have sprinkler rot. Phytophthora is also in the water. It goes in streams, can come from your like the channels here. Water can have Phytophthora in the water, that you have to be very, very careful what you do. It's not so bad, but you have to make sure that you've got your fungicide program in place. And storage, black spot, you see that on Williams sometimes, even in this district I've seen a little bit of scab that they didn't, probably they have a little bit of scab when they pick, and then later on it developed in a cold storage. See, this is one nice common rot. But this is actually what you saw on the photos actually. See this, the grey mold, and you see that's what grey molds look on the pears, what was exported. This is actually botrytis, very common in the grapes, but people use, if you use Daylan, you would have a very good control. If you do Zyram, you have very little control. This again, you have to target your chemicals with rots you target. That's okay, and that's a very good example from that. Again, penicillin rots, these develop most of the time in cold stores, and then when you open the rooms and you have one big mess of rots, pears, there's always penicillin rots. And penicillin rots is really interesting, but they can sit in the walls through the cold rooms, and you should fumigate actually your rooms to avoid it. It's again, it is a hygiene problem, basically. Okay, and you see that's what I mean in the bins when you see those nice, we call it mouse nests, we call it when I grew up actually. You see that quite often like that. It looks like a mouse nest inside. And sometimes you see it on the outside of the bins. They grow totally white. Again, culture control, like I said, you can use low-angle sprinkles, not over the top, but we don't do that too much on pears anyway, but in Europe it is a real thing. They do that for chili. They do a lot of overhead irrigation got good quality water. New Zealand do it, but you can cause rots by overhead irrigation. There's yeah, good weed control. That's all very normal basic thing. Calcium-based products can have calcium chloride. How many people spray calcium on the pears? Very good. Again, quite often you find in this district people grow for cannery, they don't have any sprays, no calcium sprays. And if they do, then maybe 3 max, you know. They try to grow it so cheap as possible without putting any money to these crops. And again, that's one thing, is not really use a minimal amount of nitrogen fertilizer. Again, when I came here and started working in this district, it was very common actually to put 200 kilos of nitrogen post-harvest on the pears, and again, a little bit urea in the spring again. And how more nitrate you put, how softer the fruit, how more rots you can expect. Okay, it's very important. And again, I don't talk about this, but personally I think this is really another really big issue actually, talking about proper maturity. When are we picking? I got calls quite often and they said, when are we picking, especially with the Corellas. Peckhams they know, but Corellas, nobody knows really when to pick. We just pick, especially when the neighbors start, we start. And then actually, that's actually funny, that's probably lacking from the DPI as well, that it's actually not many studies really found where we have to really find the maturity basically, you know, what's the optimum time for picking. Especially on Corellas, on Peckhams you find plenty of information. Okay, and again, you see that like this is actually a photo from Holland. They got actually a mobile cleaning for bins. And those guys do that on contract, and that's on the bottom actually, they say they do 100 bins per hour cleaning. But they got actually mobile, they lease that out, those guys come on the farm and clean the bins for the growers. And like my brothers would use them as well, just so much per bin. I don't know what they pay, but whatever it is, just to clean the bins, but it is a lot of work. But you see how important it is, you know, they got everything with them, the good products to clean the bins and wash them, and anyway, big semi-truck load. Again, I went through everything more or less, through the whole thing, but again, harvest, cool down quickly, just to sum it up a little bit, avoid injuries, picking is very important, you know, make sure at least that the nails are cut short, or make sure that you wear gloves when picking pears. And this is very important. Stem punches, again, it is a real problem, especially on contract. I picked actually once at a backpacker on contract, and I know, although I grew up on a farm, if you do contract, you pick different, then you really want to fill up the bins and you don't worry about the grower too much. You just make sure that you got the money in the pocket and you're gone. And we use more backpackers, and they're very unskilled at picking. And again, storage is very important. That's actually, yeah, what, and you, with the whole smart frames is probably all changing that as I don't know. But again, how low oxygen, the less rots start to occur. This is very important. Okay, but this is probably the most important, and we do this with the apple growers, but we don't do this with the pear growers. That's why I said if you guys export, make sure that you do more attention to pre-harvest sprays. Fungicide applied during the growing seasons, and especially before heavy rains, okay? Especially when the temperature is higher than 20 degrees. This is very important, and I'll show you this is a program that we use on apples, and I bet you that nobody ever sprays so much on the pears than we do as in the apples. Because we start 6 weeks before harvesting, and this is all done when we don't dip anymore in DPA. Is we do actually start with pristine, and then we do Dayland or Flint or Polygram or Xyron. That's the options what you have actually. It's not that you spray all 4 of them, okay, you do only 1 of them. But they actually look to the withholding period, and then the captain is the last one, 7 days before harvesting. Because you look to the withholding period and you work that way to. And then we put smart trays on the apples and we don't dip. Because that's the reason why we put 6 weeks programming for rots prevention, and especially on fruities and galas. And I must say, I work probably with 60% of the production of the apples in Australia, and I have to say that probably 75% of the growers would do this. You would not even think about it anymore, just to avoid rots. But in pears, I would say there's not many people who do this. An intensive program. This is an apple program, by the way, actually. But again, and then you got actually what we do, the other groups, like the dipping, the Nylate, all those products, what you can do after harvest to avoid rots. Nylate, by the way, is very, very good. And if I look actually around the packing sheds in Australia, when we use Nylate, we got the leases problem. I'm not saying that we will have no problems, but the leases. Okay? Again, you see the blue mold, penicillin rots, very interesting. You see some chemicals were better on other rots than others. This, again, you have a look. This, again, this is available. This is from the DPI. Yes, you can actually look at that, what they recommend. And again, target your rots basically. If you know which problem you have, you can target your chemicals for your special rots. Okay. Very good. This again, we got actually the DPA. That's, I put a big question mark of DPA stays. I didn't know that it was so nasty, but anyway, that's when you start working with it, you find that it is not nice. But as long as we can use it and it is allowed, I would say do that. But make sure that you are, yeah, with SmartFresh you probably don't know, but you don't have to, but anyway, you can tell the story about that. But how less we use it, I have to say, the better it is. That's, and again, then we talk about SmartFresh, but somebody else will talk about it, but it is actually registered, and I'm glad that we can start using it on pears in particular, especially for the consumers. That they don't, I like actually a little bit firmer pears, but some people like it very soft, but I'm not one of them. And that was my presentation.
Got probably a couple of minutes if anyone's got any questions for Marcel.